Hello and welcome to my channel. With me, I have a very interesting video of a sister sharing what she was taught by her father about Israel, which really is shocking. So make sure to stay glued and watch this video to the very end. In this video, this lady shares that her father converted them to Judaism when she was 6. So she's grown up Jewish. Her father identifies as a man of the Torah and he is a hardcore Jew. Now, she further goes on to say that that time was an interesting time of her life, but she hated it because it felt restrictive. It created a level of disillusion in her with everything that's going on. Now, she shares how his father explained to her that Israel or people in Israel are not good people. They're not even the indigenous Israelis. She went on to say that Britain shipped European Jews to that region in the early 1900s and oppressed people. She also talks about one of the reasons they are doing all of this, which is because of the canal. Now, they are trying to build a canal because the one that separates Egypt from the Middle East makes $9 a year. So they're trying to take that part of the land as well and create another canal which has Israel, France, Britain, and the US all on it. Here is the video.
I grew up Jewish. And I don't mean Hebrew Israelite. I mean my father converted us to Judaism when I was about 6, between the ages of 6 and 12. And I went to synagogue. My rabbi was ethnically Jewish as well. His name was Rabbi Moshe. We went to a very diverse synagogue. I'm from Miami, Florida. I'm Caribbean descent. So it was a mix of every Caribbean, every Latino, Dominican. It's a full house of ethnic diversity. My father wanted me to have a bat mitzvah. We went to every holiday, celebrated Pesach, celebrated Hanukkah. My favorite thing to do was blow the shofar and spin dreidels. I was a little Jewish, Caribbean Jewish pick-me. Father identifies himself as a man of the Torah, and he is a hardcore Jew. He makes jokes about it, and he sends me videos of the prayer. I can even pray I can pray specific Hebrew prayers. I can't remember all of it, but that was an interesting time in my life. I hated it because it felt restrictive. It's created this level of disillusion in me with everything going on. And I remember my father explaining to me how Israel, they're not good people. They're a colonial state. The Israelis are not even the indigenous Israelis. Keep in mind, Britain shipped European Jews to that region in the early 1900s. Oppressed people came to this region and did their own oppression, which is where we have to go back to the conversation of the structural dysfunctions within the European state of mind. They somehow seem to dysfunct into these states of needing to claim power through their toxic idealism. I am a true believer that xenophobia is a psychological illness, a psychological dysfunction that need to subject someone due to phenotypical differences, religious differences, spiritual differences, cultural differences. And I'm now at this point where I'm split. I'm in the Western world. I'm living the Western life. I'm doing the American thing, barely making it, subverting our consciousness, living under a minimum wage, while simultaneously watching them commit genocide to ensue a nationalist identity of whiteness through the lens of Judaism. Now, I watched a video saying that one of the reasons why they're also doing this is because of a canal. I would love for everyone to comment about that. But they're trying to build a canal, and that the canal that separates Egypt from, I think, the Middle East, it makes $9 billion a year. So they're trying to take that part of the land and create another canal. Israel, France, Britain, and the US is all in on it. It feels like it's too late. They have the monopoly on violence because of their weaponry. We funded the corporations, which the corporations funded the development of weaponry, which allowed the development of monopoly on violence. It's very simple. It's a very simple succession. And if we don't acknowledge these things, we are going to continue to live in the cycle, because guess what? As soon as we click off our TikTok pages, we are going back out here and funding the corporations through consuming their medicine, through consuming their food, through consuming their technology. And it's like, on one level, it's very hard to stray away from these corporations because they've monopolized basic resources. But collectively, if we ever want to redirect the narrative, one, we need to elect a new billionaire. That's my new narrative, and I'm gonna post a video about that. Two, we need to redirect the dollar. And three, we need to acknowledge the powerhouse that TikTok gave us. We are now the manufacturers. We can redirect a large portion of funding. Now, it's hard. I keep going back to the thought process. It's a little too late. They got the monopoly on violence. Their weaponry is out of this world. How are we going to defeat someone who's willing to shoot you for just standing and existing? Willing to torture you for just breathing? How do you really combat that? But if there's a will, there's a way. So I'm asking everyone to really, really put this into your narrative, into your conceptualization. And this applies to me too, because I'm not absolved from it. I do my best to stay away from certain corporations. McDonald's, I don't even eat that for health reasons. That's literally the number one reason why they got us locked up now, mentally and emotionally. But McDonald's, Starbucks, like, that's the basis you can do. And if you can't, I don't want to see you coming on here rapping about Palestine or any other genocide that's happening right now. When this came up, it added a different layer of like, wow, I really hate you, God. I really can hate you. And I know that's a lot. Shout out to the Muslims for their unwavering faith. For those who are really practicing unwavering faith right now, is insane. But I think the number one important thing for everyone to do is to keep the Palestinians' history in your mouth. We have to maintain, because what is happening is that they're trying to eradicate any identity. This is not a land conflict issue. They're trying to eradicate the nature, the history. They're bombing cemeteries, y'all. This isn't just move over. This is like, we don't want your kind on this planet to ever be acknowledged. So the very first thing we can do is to make sure that we make our time and effort to really learn and keep the Palestinian history alive. But until we figure out how to really really shift the narrative of these billionaire corporations, xenophobic leaders, let's just start there.
Social and political developments in Europe convinced Jews they needed their own country, and their ancestral homeland seemed like the right place to establish it. European Jews, 90% of all Jews at the time, arrived at Zionism partly because of rising anti-Semitic persecution and partly because the Enlightenment introduced Jews to secular nationalism. Between 1896 and 1948, hundreds of thousands of Jews resettled from Europe to what was then British-controlled Palestine, including large numbers forced out of Europe during the Holocaust. Now, many Arabs saw the influx of Jews as a European colonial movement, and the two peoples fought bitterly. The British couldn't control the violence, and in 1947, the United Nations voted to split the land into two countries. Almost all of the roughly 650,000 Jews went to the blue territory on the map to the right, and a majority of the Arab population, roughly twice the size of the Jewish community, went to the orange. The Jewish residents accepted the deal. The Palestinians, who saw the plan as an extension of a long-running Jewish attempt to push them out of the land, fought it. Now, the Arab states of Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, and Syria all later declared war on Israel as well. Israeli forces defeated the Palestinian militias and Arab armies in a vicious conflict that turned 700,000 Palestinian civilians into refugees. The UN petition promised 56% of British Palestine for the Jewish state. By the end of the war, Israel possessed 77%, everything except the West Bank and the eastern quarter of Jerusalem, controlled by Jordan, as well as the Gaza Strip, controlled by Egypt. It left Israelis with a state but not Palestinians. Now, the story of Israel's foundation has often been told from the perspective of Jewish immigration to the land of Israel. Living Zion turns this historical narrative on its head, focusing on Jewish out-migration from Palestine and Israel between 1945 and the late 1950s. Based on previously unexamined primary sources collected from 22 archives in 6 countries, Rael demonstrates that despite the dominant view that displaced Jews should settle in the Jewish homeland, many Jews instead saw the country as a site of displacement or a way station to more desirable lands, weaving together the perspectives of governments, aid organizations, Jewish communities, and the personal stories of individual migrants. Yehudai brings to light the ideological, political, and social tensions surrounding immigration, covering events in the Middle East, Europe, and the Americas. By the end of the 20th century, most of the East European Jews who survived the Holocaust and their descendants had moved overseas. The migration that occurred before World War II saved many Jewish lives. Between 1919 and 2005, the total volume of the Jewish international migration from Eastern Europe can be roughly estimated 1969 to 2005. This figure includes non-Jewish relatives of Jews. Of these, approximately 1.95 million went first to Palestine or Israel and 1.85 million to other countries. Talking about the canal being one of the reasons for all of this, I remember sharing a video where I was talking about the Suez Canal, and the Suez crisis began on October 29, 1956, when Israeli armed forces pushed into Egypt toward the Suez Canal, a valuable waterway that controlled 2/3 of the oil used by Europe. In July of that year, Egyptian president nationalized the canal. The Israelis were joined by French and British forces, which damaged their relationships with the United States and nearly brought the Soviet Union into the conflict. In the end, Egypt emerged victorious, and the British, French, and Israeli governments withdrew their troops in late 1956 and early 1957. The event was a pivotal event among Cold War superpowers. Now, the Suez Canal was built in Egypt under the supervision of French diplomats and run jointly by a British-French organization. The man-made waterway, which opened in 1869 after 10 years of construction, separates most of Egypt from the Sinai Peninsula. At 120 miles long, the Suez Canal connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Indian Ocean by way of the Red Sea, allowing goods to be shipped between Europe and Asia more directly. Its value to international trade made it a nearly instant source of conflict among Egypt's neighbors and Cold War superpowers vying for dominance. The catalyst for the joint Israeli-British-French attack on Egypt was the nationalization of the Suez Canal by Egyptian leader in July 1956. The situation had been brewing for some time, and 2 years earlier, in the wake of World War II, the Egyptian military had begun pressuring the British to end their colonial era military presence, which had been granted in the 1936 Anglo-Egyptian Treaty in the Canal Zone. Now, the question still remains, if there is a canal already, why build another one? Now, there have been a lot of debates on this, leading to the conclusion that they want to take that part of the land as well, so that they can also make money off it. Now, kindly share your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next video.